need to control that child," my mother-in-law said, loud enough for the entire living room to hear as I stepped in front of my 9-year-old son and closed his bedroom door behind me. Her voice wasn't raised. It never was. That was the thing about her. She had mastered the art of the quiet blade, the kind of comment that slices clean and leaves you standing there wondering if you just imagined it. She was smiling when she said it, holding a glass of white wine, surrounded by my husband's aunts and cousins. Christmas lights blinked softly behind her. The house smelled like cinnamon and pine. Everything looked perfect. My son Noah had been crying for 20 minutes. I hadn't seen it happen. I was in the kitchen trying to keep the green bean casserole from burning when the sound of his voice changed. That specific pitch that every mother recognizes immediately, the one that isn't a tantrum or an annoyance but genuine distress. I turned the burner off and walked into the hallway and stopped. My sister-in-law, Brooke, was sitting in the middle of the sectional with Noah's journal open in her lap. Not a diary with a little lock on it, but a composition notebook he used for his creative writing. Stories he'd been working on since 3rd grade. Things about dragons and spaceships and a boy who could talk to animals. He'd left it on the coffee table when he went to the bathroom. That was enough of an invitation for Brooke. She was reading from it out loud, doing voices. Her husband was laughing. My father-in-law was pretending not to smile. "Listen to this one," she was saying, flipping pages. "The dragon was very ugly, but he tried his best. That's you, buddy," she called toward the hallway where Noah had reappeared, frozen in the doorway. "The ugly dragon who tries his best." The laughter that followed wasn't explosive. It was worse than that. It was casual, like nothing had happened. Like reading a 9-year-old's private notebook aloud and mocking it was just part of Christmas. Noah's face did something I had never seen it do before. It didn't crumple into crying, not right away. It went flat, completely blank, like something behind his eyes just quietly turned off. That was the moment I crossed the room. I took the notebook out of Brooke's hands. I didn't snatch it dramatically. I just took it, the way you take something that belongs to you. She actually looked surprised for half a second before she rearranged her expression into something amused and slightly bored. "Oh, relax," she said. "He left it out. It's not like it was locked up." "That's enough," I said. "It was just a joke. He needs thicker skin if he's going to be a writer." She turned to the room like she was looking for backup. "Right? Kids are too sensitive now." A few people nodded. My father-in-law took a long sip of his drink. My mother-in-law was the one who spoke. "You need to control that child," meaning Noah. Meaning the fact that he was visibly upset was the problem. Not what Brooke had done. The crying, the disruption to the Christmas atmosphere she had spent 3 weeks curating. I looked at my husband across the room. He was sitting on the arm of the loose seat, and for a moment our eyes met, and I waited for him to say something. He looked down at his phone. "Come on, bud," I said quietly, and I guided Noah down the hallway to his bedroom. I sat with him on the edge of his bed for a long time. He didn't want to talk at first, which was fine. I just sat there with him, one hand on his back, listening to him breathe through the jagged aftermath of crying. The sounds of the Christmas party drifted through the door. Someone laughing loudly at something on TV, the clink of glasses, his grandmother calling out that the pie was ready. "She made everyone laugh at my stories," Noah said finally. "I know. I worked really hard on those." He said it quietly, not accusatory, just stating a fact, like he was trying to understand how that could be true and the laughing could also be true. "I know you did. I've read every single one." He was quiet for a second. "Is my writing bad?" I closed my eyes for a half a second. "Your writing is not bad. Your writing is imaginative and specific, and you put things in it that most grown-ups forget how to see." He didn't look convinced. He pulled at a loose thread on his comforter. Why did Aunt Brooke think it was funny? I didn't have a keen answer for that. I told him the truth, which was that sometimes people make themselves feel bigger by making someone else feel small, and it doesn't say anything about the person they chose. It says everything about them. He nodded slowly. "Grandma thinks I need thicker skin." "Grandma is wrong," I said. That surprised him. He looked at me. Being sensitive is not a flaw, I told him. It's why your stories are good. He was quiet for another minute. Then he asked if we could go home. Not to get ice cream, not to watch a movie, just home. Our apartment, his room, away from all of it. Soon, I told him. Okay, give me a little while. I kissed the top of his head and went back out into the party. The conversation had moved on completely. Someone had pulled up a football game. Brooke was refilling her wine at the kitchen counter, relaxed, unbothered, already somewhere else in her mind. My mother-in-law was arranging the dessert table with the focused intensity of someone who needed everything to look exactly right. My husband found me near the doorway to the kitchen. Hey, he said, lowering his voice. She didn't mean anything by it. You know how Brooke is. I know exactly how Brooke is, I said. It was just the notebook thing. He'll forget about it by tomorrow. He asked me if his writing was bad. My husband winced. I'll talk to him. I'd like you to talk to your sister. He rubbed the back of his neck, the way he did when he was calculating how much energy a thing was going to cost him. It's Christmas. Can we just not make this a whole thing? She humiliated him in front of your entire family. I know, and I'll talk to her after the holidays. I looked at him for a long moment. He wasn't a bad person. He was a person who had spent 35 years learning that keeping the peace in his family meant absorbing things, letting them pass, moving on. It was the water he'd grown up swimming in. I had spent 4 years trying to understand that, and another 2 quietly drowning in it. I went and got my coat. I told my mother-in-law I had a headache and that Noah and I were going to head out. She looked at me with the particular expression she used with situations she found inconvenient. You're leaving. We haven't had dessert. Merry Christmas, I said. Thank you for having us. Brooke was watching from the sectional. She raised her wine glass in a little mock toast. I didn't respond. In the car, Noah fell asleep before we got on the highway. I drove home with both hands on the wheel and the radio off, thinking about the look on his face when she was reading his notebook. That blankness. The lights going out. My phone lit up on the passenger seat, texts arriving in the family group chat. My mother-in-law Noah is so sensitive. I really think you should talk to someone about that. Brooke, I was joking. Some people can't take a joke. My father-in-law, let's not make this bigger than it is. Merry Christmas, everyone. My husband, 30 seconds later, she's right. It was just a joke. Sorry for the drama. She's right. I read that twice. Then I set the phone face down on the seat. The apartment was quiet when we got home. I carried Noah in from the car. He was too big for it, really, all arms and knees, but he didn't wake up and got him into bed without turning on the overhead light. I stood in his doorway for a moment looking at the dragon he'd drawn and taped above his desk. He'd spent an entire Saturday afternoon on it. Multicolored scales, each one shaded individually. I went into the kitchen and sat at the table with a glass of water. My mother-in-law's voice kept psyching through my head. You need to control that child. The way she'd said it to the room, not to me. A performance of disapproval. Garnering tiny nods from aunts and cousins who hadn't even witnessed what happened. I thought about the 4 Christmases before this one, the comment about Noah being too quiet at the dinner table, the time Brooke had ruffled his hair so hard he'd flinched and she'd laughed and said he was such a serious little thing. The Easter where my mother-in-law had told me, within earshot of Noah, that I was raising him to be soft. The way my husband had looked away every single time, calculating the cost of saying something and deciding it was too high. I had let it happen. I had told myself I was being accommodating, that I was keeping the family together, that Noah barely noticed, that kids were resilient. Every one of those things had been a lie I told myself so I didn't have to do the hard thing. I opened my laptop. I wasn't sure what I was looking for at first, just something to do with the anger that had nowhere to go. I opened my email and started scrolling through the old threads from my mother-in-law, the ones about holiday logistics, schedules, family photos. And then I found one from 8 months ago that I had read once and filed away in a folder labeled FYI. It was from my father-in-law, forwarded to me by accident. A thread between him and someone named J. Hargrove. He'd meant to send it to my husband. The subject line was, the LLC situation. I opened it slowly. It took me a few minutes to understand what I was reading because I had no background in business law and the language was dense. But the shape of it became clear. My mother-in-law had started a small event planning business 4 years ago, something she treated more like a hobby, a reason to have business cards, a thing she brought up at every family gathering. Brooke was her business partner, which mostly meant Brooke handled the social media and made suggestions about color palettes. The business had taken out a small business loan 18 months ago to cover expenses for a venue deposit that fell through. The loan was for $42,000. I had co-signed it. I had forgotten. That sounds impossible, but I remembered the afternoon with a sudden, nauseating clarity, my mother-in-law sitting at our kitchen table explaining that the bank needed a co-signer with a solid credit history, that it was just a formality, that the business was doing well and the loan would be paid off in a year. My husband had been there. He'd said it was fine, that it was family, that she'd never ask if she didn't need it. I had signed the paperwork and filed it in a drawer and not thought about it again. I scrolled down to the most recent message in the chain. The loan was due for renewal in 6 weeks. The business had not paid it down. My father-in-law was asking this J. Hargrove, apparently an accountant, whether there was any way to extend the term without notifying the co-signer. The reply was brief, no. Any modification to the loan terms required co-signer consent or co-signer release and re-application. Without my agreement, the loan continued at its current terms. Without continued bank approval, it would be called in full. I sat back in my chair. The anger I'd been carrying since the Christmas party began to shift into something quieter and colder. I didn't do anything that night. I closed the laptop and went to bed. But I lay in the dark for a long time, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Noah's face when the lights went out. In the morning, Noah woke up and immediately went to his desk and opened his composition notebook to a new page. I watched him from the doorway for a moment. He was chewing his pencil eraser, frowning at the blank page, completely absorbed. My kid. My serious, imaginative, too quiet for them kid. I made coffee and called my college roommate, Priya, who was now a family law attorney in Phoenix. She had handled a co-signing situation in a case before. I explained the loan. She explained my options slowly and clearly, the way she always did, without condescension. You're not on the hook for anything unless they default, she said, but you do have the right to be released from the co-signer agreement if you request it formally and they can secure an alternative. Given that the loan is up for renewal anyway, you have real leverage. If I request release, I said, what happens to their loan? They have to either find another co-signer with equivalent credit or the bank reassesses. Given the amount they've paid down, she paused while I told her the number. Given that they've paid down almost nothing, they might not qualify to renew independently. I drank my coffee. I'm not telling you what to do, Priya said. I'm just telling you what the landscape looks like. I know, I said. That's all I needed. I spent the next few days going about my regular life, work, school pickup, homework, dinner. Noah seemed okay. He didn't bring up the Christmas party again, but I noticed he'd moved his notebook from the coffee table to his desk, and he kept his bedroom door closed when he was writing. That detail sat in my chest like a small stone. My husband tried to smooth things over 3 days after Christmas, telling me his mother wanted to have us for New Year's and that Brooke had said to tell me she was sorry if it came across wrong. Not sorry for doing it. Sorry if it came across wrong. I told him calmly that we wouldn't be coming for New Year's. He stared at me. She apologized. She didn't apologize. She issued a non-apology with passive grammar. There's a difference. You're being inflexible. I'm being clear, I said. Those aren't the same thing either. The call from my mother-in-law came 4 days into January. She didn't bother with pleasantries. I think it's time you and I have a real conversation, she said, about your attitude toward this family. Okay, I said. She took that as an opening. She talked for several minutes about how sensitive I was, how I'd overreacted at Christmas, how Noah needed to learn to interact with people, and I was making that harder by coddling him, how Brooke was hurt that I'd left the party without saying a proper goodbye, how my father-in-law was exhausted by the tension I created. I let her finish. "Are you done?" I asked. She paused. "I'm trying to have a productive conversation." "Then I'll have one with you. Your daughter read my son's private journal out loud in front of your entire family and mocked the contents for a laugh. He came to me afterward and asked if his writing was bad. That's what happened at Christmas. That's what I left because of. I don't tell Brooke a goodbye hug after that." Silence on the line. She was joking. "I know you believe that. I'm telling you that it doesn't matter what she intended. It matters what it did. And what it did was teach my son that the people who are supposed to love him will use his private thoughts as entertainment." More silence. Then her voice shifted into something cooler, more deliberate. "I think you need to decide how important this family is to you. Because the way you've been acting, pulling Noah away, poisoning my son against his own family, that's not something we're going to tolerate indefinitely." There it was, the threat dressed up as a conversation. "I appreciate you being direct," I said. "I'll be direct too. I'll be sending a formal letter to the bank this week requesting release from the co-signer agreement on your business loan." The silence this time was different. "What?" she said. The word came out thin. "The loan is up for renewal in about 5 weeks. You'll want to find an alternative co-signer or make other arrangements. I'll ask them to notify you directly once my release is processed." You can't do that. That loan is for the business." "I know what it's for. I also know I signed it and I have the right to request release at renewal. I'm exercising that right." You're doing this to punish us." I thought about Noah asking me if his writing was bad. I thought about the notebook moving from the coffee table to the closed bedroom. I thought about 4 years of letting things pass because the cost of addressing them felt too high, and the slow compounding damage of that math. "I'm doing this because I've made a decision about what I'm willing to be responsible for," I said, "and it no longer includes this." I sent the letter the next morning. Certified mail, return receipt requested. Priya had told me to do it that way. The bank representative called me within 48 hours to confirm receipt and walk through the process. The response from the family was fast and loud. My mother-in-law called 4 times in one afternoon. My father-in-law left a voicemail that started measured and ended somewhere near threatening. Brooke sent a text that was mostly capital letters. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in 2 years sent a Facebook message telling me I was tearing the family apart. My husband sat across from me at the kitchen table that evening, looking like someone had rearranged the furniture in a room he'd lived in his whole life. "Why didn't you tell me you were going to do this?" he asked. "Because every time I've tried to tell you something about your family, you've told me I was overreacting." It didn't have an answer for that. "The loan was in my name too," I said. "My credit, my signature. I have the right to protect myself." "She's my mother." "I know. This is going to destroy her business." "That's between her and the bank," I said. "She had 18 months to pay it down. She chose not to." He was quiet for a long time. I could see him working through it, the years of conditioning fighting with something that was slowly, finally becoming clear to him. "I should have said something to Brooke at Christmas," he said, eventually. "Yes. I know that. I know you know." He looked at the table. "I don't know how to fix this." "I'm not sure all of it is fixable," I said. "But I know what I need from you going forward, and I know what I can't keep absorbing. That's a start." The loan renewal was denied. The bank didn't find the business creditworthy without a co-signer with my profile. My mother-in-law had to negotiate a repayment plan on the existing balance. The event planning business went on hiatus. Brooke posted about it vaguely on Instagram, something about taking time to reset and realign, her usual language for things she didn't want to explain directly. The family stopped calling after the first 2 weeks. Not because anything was resolved, but because there was nothing left to leverage. I had removed the one thing that tied me to their approval, my willingness to absorb the cost of their behavior to keep the peace. In February, Noah came home from school and dropped his backpack at the door and announced that his creative writing teacher had asked if she could submit one of his stories to a district anthology. She said it was the best one in the class, he told me, already heading to the kitchen for a snack. Casually, like it was just a fact. I stood in the hallway for a second after he disappeared around the corner, my hand still on the door I'd just closed. "That's amazing, bud," I called. "I know," he called back. I laughed, actually laughed, the kind that comes up before you expect it. That evening after dinner, he sat at his desk with his notebook open and his pencil moving across the page, and I stood in his doorway for a moment and watched him work. The door was open. I keep thinking about the notebook. Not the Christmas party, not the loan, not the certified letter, the notebook moving from the coffee table to the desk. Noah didn't announce it. He didn't say, "I'm hiding this now because I don't feel safe." He just quietly relocated it, the way kids do when they've learned something about the world that no one explicitly taught them. That image stays with me more than anything else. For a long time, I told myself that absorbing things was a form of love, that staying quiet when Brooke made a comment, that steering Noah away from the conflict instead of addressing it, that signing a loan I should have asked more questions about. All of it was me keeping the family together. I see now that it was the opposite. Every time I absorbed something I shouldn't have, I was teaching Noah that people who claim to love you are allowed to hurt you, and the right response is to say nothing and move on. I was teaching him that with my body, with my choices, every single time. That's the part that's hardest to sit with. What I did wasn't complicated. I stopped co-signing things I didn't believe in, literally and otherwise. The loan was a legal document, but it was also a symbol of every agreement I'd made to stay small so the people around me could feel comfortable. Requesting that release wasn't punishment. It was me finally understanding that I had been extending a kind of credit, emotional, financial, practical, that was never going to be repaid, because the people drawing on it didn't believe they owed me anything in the first place. There's something clarifying about that realization. Not pleasant, but clarifying. When you stop waiting for people to treat you with the decency you've been patiently hoping for, and you simply make decisions based on what you actually know to be true, things get very quiet very fast. My mother-in-law stopped calling. The group chat went silent. It turned out the noise had always been a negotiating tactic, and once I stopped negotiating, there was nothing left to say. Noah's teacher submitted his story to the district anthology in February. He told me like it was a minor update, grabbed a snack, and went back to his room. I stood in the hallway for a moment by myself, just breathing. That kid has been working on those stories for 2 years in composition notebooks, in pencil, door closed or door open, regardless of whether anyone thought they were good. That's not something you can fake or force. That's something that comes from inside a person who has decided that what they make matters even when no one is watching. I want to be more like him when I grow up, honestly. What I know now is that protecting him wasn't just about removing him from a bad moment. It was about showing him, with my actual behavior, that the people who love you don't use you as material. That when someone in your life crosses that line, you don't have to perform gratitude or swallow the damage to keep the peace. You get to say quietly, without drama, with your choices more than your words, that this is not something I will be part of. He has his notebook back on the coffee table now, door open.